Dr. Maxwell Blair set his phone down, watching rain streak down his office window at Boston General. 18 months of his life dedicated to curing the incurable, only to discover his wife had caught something she couldn't cure from her weekend adventure with another man. Dr. Blair? His research assistant knocked. The CDC liaison is here. The man who entered wore a crisp black suit with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. Dr. Blair, I'm Agent Rodriguez. We need to discuss Project Lazarus. Max nodded, locking his door. For 18 months, he'd worked on viral enhancement protocols that could target specific genetic markers. Designer plagues. The government wanted a cure before someone weaponized it. The symposium in D.C. has been moved up, Rodriguez said. 9 days, starting Monday. Complete media blackout. Your wife can't know where you're going. Max almost laughed. Trust me, Melinda won't care. She's been busy with her biotech clients. Your wife works in biotech PR? That's not in your security file. She pitched some pharmaceutical startups, nothing classified. Max opened the folder, scanning names of virologists, genetic engineers, military contractors. When do I leave? Tonight. Pack for cold weather. As Rodriguez left, Max stared at his wedding photo. Melinda smiled back, radiant in white. That was 4 years ago, before her restlessness turned dark, before the mysterious weekend trips for client meetings. He'd tried to ignore the signs. New perfume, the gym membership she never used, the way she flinched when he touched her phone. But Dr. Maxwell Blair didn't become one of the country's leading infectious disease specialists by ignoring symptoms. The house felt different when Max returned from D.C. 9 days later. He'd taken an earlier flight, wanting to surprise Melinda. The surprise was on him. Mel? He called out. No answer. Her car was in the driveway, purse on the counter. He climbed the stairs, hearing water running. The bedroom looked lived in. Pillows scattered, wine glasses on both nightstands. 2 wine glasses. Melinda? She spun around, towel wrapped hastily around her body. Max, you're early. The symposium was supposed to run through Friday. It finished early. He studied her flushed face. You look flustered. I just got back from a run. She kissed his cheek, but her lips felt cold. How was Washington? Classified, you know how it is. Max noted unfamiliar toiletries. Men's cologne that wasn't his. Expecting company? Oh, that. Jamie from Morrison Biotech was here earlier. We were going over the Helix campaign. He left some things behind. Jamie. Max knew Morrison Biotech. They'd been flagged by the FDA for questionable practices. He'd warned the ethics board about them personally. Jamie Martinez? Max asked, opening the bathroom drawer. Martinez? No, Jamie. Johnson. You don't know him? The lie came too easily. Max's fingers found expensive cufflinks with the Morrison Biotech logo. Not something a PR executive would forget, accidentally. I'm starving, Max said, pocketing the cufflinks. Let's order Chinese. Over dinner, Melinda chattered about her week. Normal conversation, except Max noticed how she avoided eye contact, how her hands trembled reaching for wine. How's the security system been? He asked. Any issues while I was gone? Oh, you know technology. It went offline a few times. I called the company, but they said it was probably just a glitch. Max nodded, already planning his next move. Their system had redundant backups and deleted nothing for 30 days. If someone had deliberately disabled it, he'd find out. After Melinda went to bed claiming exhaustion, Max descended to his office. The security console showed exactly what he'd expected. 5 days of complete blackout. But the system was smarter than Melinda knew. Even when main cameras went offline, motion sensors continued logging to an encrypted drive. Max connected his laptop, running a recovery program he'd designed. At 3:47 a.m., grainy night vision footage began loading. Max watched his wife unlock the door, admitting 2 men. Even in pixelated green-tinted video, he recognized one immediately. Andrew Phelps, Morrison Biotech's lead investor, and the same man Max had reported to federal regulators. The timestamp showed they'd stayed until dawn. Max fast-forwarded through recovered files. More footage from different nights. Melinda laughing, dancing in her silk robe. The 3 of them sharing expensive whiskey. Phelps's hands on his wife's shoulders, her head thrown back in laughter that turned into something else. The final video made his hands shake. Melinda, topless, kissing both men while they undressed her. His wife, writhing between 2 strangers in their marriage bed. Max closed the laptop and sat in darkness. As an infectious disease specialist, he'd seen what unprotected encounters with multiple partners could bring home, especially when one partner ran a biotech company known for illegal human trials. 3 weeks later, Melinda complained of fatigue. It's probably stress, Max told her, taking her temperature. Normal, but he'd noticed small lesions forming on her inner thighs. You've been working too hard. Maybe. She leaned against him. I've been having weird dreams, and my joints ache. Max recognized the symptoms immediately. During his classified research, he'd studied similar manifestations in Eastern European test subjects. Phelps's company had been experimenting with enhanced viral mutations, creating infections that could slip past normal immune responses. Let me run some blood work, Max offered, just to be safe. The results confirmed his suspicions. Melinda had contracted something that wasn't in any medical textbook, an engineered pathogen that combined the worst aspects of several infections. It was designed to lay dormant before erupting in systemic inflammation, organ damage, and eventually death. Phelps had given his wife more than just a good time. He'd given her a death sentence. Max stared at the lab results, feeling something cold settle in his chest. For 18 months, he'd worked to cure diseases. Now he had the power to withhold that cure. Doctor Blair, the patient in room 12 is asking for you specifically. Nurse Patricia handed him a chart. Says you're the only specialist who can help her condition. Max glanced at the name. Rebecca Stone, Melinda's alias for private medical visits. His wife had been coming to the hospital under false identity, trying to get treatment without him knowing. Tell Miss Stone I'm unavailable, Max said. Refer her to Dr. Williams. She seemed desperate, said it was about a personal health scare from the wrong man. Max's jaw tightened. So Melinda suspected where she'd picked up her little problem. Then she should ask the wrong man for help. That evening, Max confronted his wife with surgical precision. You look pale, he observed over dinner. Are you feeling all right? Melinda picked at her salad. Just tired. Maybe I'm coming down with something. Something like what? I don't know, maybe a virus. She hesitated, watching his face. Could someone catch something serious from contaminated surfaces? Or shared drinks? Max almost smiled. She was fishing, trying to create innocent explanations. Depends on the pathogen. Some infections require more intimate contact. Color drained from Melinda's face. What do you mean? Close physical contact, skin-to-skin transmission, the kind of contact you might have during business meetings with clients. Max's voice remained clinically neutral. Speaking of which, how's Jamie Johnson from Morrison Biotech? Still leaving his personal items in our bathroom? Melinda's fork clattered to her plate. I told you, that was just Andrew Phelps's cufflinks. Max placed the accessories on the table. Strange that a man named Jamie Johnson would wear cufflinks with AP engraved. His wife's mouth opened and closed silently. I know about Phelps, Melinda. I know about the other man, too. I know about your little party while I was in Washington. Max leaned forward. And I know what you brought home from your weekend getaway. Tears started flowing. Max, please. Let me explain. Explain what? That you decided to mess around with a man whose company experiments on adult industries workers in Romania? That you exposed yourself to God knows what kind of engineered pathogen? Max's voice rose. Or should we discuss how you've been using false names to seek medical treatment? I have video footage. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Melinda stared at him, realizing her lies were worthless. From the security system you thought you'd disabled, Max continued. Every night, every position, every exchange of bodily fluids between you, Phelps, and his associate doctor, Carl Brennan. Oh, God. Melinda buried her face in her hands. God can't help you now, but I might be able to. Max reached across the table, lifting her chin until she met his eyes. If you're completely honest with me about everything. The confession took 3 hours. Melinda admitted to a 2-month affair with both men, convinced they were legitimate biotech investors interested in her PR services. They'd seduced her with talk of revolutionary medical breakthroughs and insider investment opportunities. They said they were testing enhancement therapies, she whispered. Treatments that could boost immune function, increase longevity. Andrew offered to let me participate in an exclusive trial. Max felt ice forming in his veins. What kind of participation? Injections. They said it was completely safe, just vitamin cocktails and immune boosters. They did it right there in our bedroom, said it would be more comfortable than a clinical setting. They injected you with experimental drugs in our house? Melinda nodded miserably. Andrew said I was helping advance medical science, that I'd be compensated if the trials succeeded. Max closed his eyes, understanding the full scope. Phelps hadn't just seduced his wife, he'd used her as a human test subject for illegal bioweapons research. The affair was just cover for human experimentation. Show me the injection sites, he ordered. Melinda reluctantly revealed small puncture wounds on her inner arms, thighs, and lower back. Professional injection sites, carefully placed to avoid visible scarring. These men weren't just criminals. They were skilled medical professionals, conducting unauthorized human experiments. Max examined each site with clinical detachment, photographing everything for evidence. Have you experienced any symptoms since the injections began? Fatigue, joint pain, some skin irritation. But Andrew said those were normal side effects. And you believed him? He's a doctor. He showed me his credentials, his research publications. Max pulled up Phelps's actual medical record on his laptop. Andrew Phelps lost his medical license 3 years ago for conducting unauthorized trials on homeless populations in Detroit. His company operates outside U.S. jurisdiction specifically to avoid FDA oversight. The man you trusted with your body is a criminal who specializes in testing weapons-grade pathogens on vulnerable victims, Max continued. And you brought whatever he's created into our home. What does that mean for me? It means you're infected with something I might not be able to cure. 2 weeks later, Melinda's condition deteriorated rapidly. Lesions spread across her torso, accompanied by high fevers and severe joint pain. She begged Max to admit her to the hospital, but he insisted on treating her at home. I'm protecting your privacy, he explained, administering IV fluids. If this gets out, both our careers are finished. What Melinda didn't know was that Max had already contacted the FBI's biocrimes unit. Agent Rodriguez had been very interested in Max's discovery of illegal human experimentation. We've been tracking Phelps for months, Rodriguez had explained during their clandestine meeting, but we needed evidence of active experimentation on U.S. soil. Your wife's case gives us everything we need. Max agreed to wear recording devices during conversations with Melinda, gathering evidence of her voluntary participation in illegal medical trials. The recordings would protect him legally while ensuring Phelps faced federal prosecution. Melinda, I need you to tell me again about the injections, Max said, adjusting the hidden microphone. The FBI wants a complete timeline. The FBI? Melinda struggled to sit up, her strength fading. Max, you promised this would stay private. That was before I realized the scope of what Phelps was doing. He's been using American citizens as test subjects for military-grade bioweapons. This is national security. But what about me? What about my treatment? Max's expression hardened. Your treatment depends on your cooperation. The antidote exists, but it's classified. I can only access it through official channels. This was a lie. Max had synthesized the antidote weeks ago, using his classified research, but Melinda didn't need to know that. Please, she whispered. I'll tell them everything. Just help me. Then start talking. The FBI raid on Morrison Biotech's headquarters made national news. Federal agents seized computers, research files, and samples of experimental pathogens. Phelps and Brennan were arrested on charges of unauthorized human experimentation, bioweapons development, and conspiracy against the United States. Max watched the coverage from his office, satisfied. The story portrayed him as a heroic whistleblower who discovered his wife's unwitting involvement in a bioterror plot. That evening, Phelps called Max's personal phone from federal lockup. Dr. Blair, this is Andrew Phelps. I think we need to talk. Max had been expecting this call. Mr. Phelps, how are you enjoying federal custody? Cut the act, Blair. We both know what's really happening here. Your wife volunteered for our trials, assigned waivers, gave informed consent, participated enthusiastically in everything we did together. Phelps's voice turned threatening. I have hours of video proving she was a willing participant. What do you want? Max asked. I want you to retract your statement to the FBI. Claim you misunderstood what was happening. Say your wife was simply having an affair, nothing more. And if I refuse, then the whole world sees exactly what kind of woman you married. Max smiled coldly. I mean, I don't negotiate with terrorists, federal, domestic, or biomedical. Enjoy your cell. He hung up and immediately called Agent Rodriguez. I need to report an attempted extortion, Max said. Andrew Phelps just threatened to release compromising footage of my wife unless I retract my testimony. The hospital parking garage was nearly empty at 11 p.m. when Max confronted Phelps's associate, Dr. Carl Brennan. The man was trying to flee the country, loading scientific equipment into a rented van. Going somewhere, Carl? Brennan spun around, nearly dropping a case of vial samples. Dr. Blair, I was just running away like a coward? Max stepped closer, noting the sweat beading on Brennan's forehead. Leaving your research partner to face federal prosecution alone? Your wife was enthusiastic about participating. She understood what she was getting into. Really? Because she seems to think you told her she was receiving vitamin supplements. People hear what they want to hear. Max's patience snapped. In one swift motion, he grabbed the heavy flashlight from his belt and swung it across Brennan's face. The man stumbled backward, blood streaming from his broken nose. You scumbag! Brennan clutched his face. You fractured my nose. Good. That'll give you something to remember me by. Max advanced, flashlight raised. You used my wife as a human test subject for bioweapons research. You exposed her to incurable pathogens. She consented to everything. She consented to lies. Max swung again, connecting with Brennan's ribs. The man doubled over, gasping. You told her she was helping medical research. You never mentioned the experimental drugs could eliminate her permanently. Brennan tried to run, but Max tackled him against the van's side panel. The metal dented from impact, and Brennan slumped to the concrete. Please, Brennan wheezed. I can give you the complete antidote formula. Save your wife's life. Max knelt beside him. I already have the antidote. What I want is justice. Because you brought her into this. Now you'll burn with her. The subpoenas arrived on a Tuesday morning. Melinda opened the certified mail with shaking hands, her condition now requiring daily medication just to function. What is this? She asked, staring at legal documents. Max glanced over from his coffee. Looks like the federal prosecutors want your testimony in the Phelps case. This is for the grand jury. They're seeking indictments for conspiracy, human trafficking, and bioweapons development. Max turned the page. It says here you're being called as a material witness. Melinda's face went pale. Material witness? That makes it sound like I was involved in the crimes. Weren't you? Because according to this, you received payment for participating in unauthorized medical trials. Max pointed to a bank record attached to the subpoena. $15,000 from Morrison Biotech deposited into your personal account. That was for PR services, legitimate consulting work. Consulting on what? How to recruit human test subjects? How to avoid FDA oversight? Max's voice turned cold. Max produced a transcript he'd received from the FBI. Melinda's recorded conversations with Phelps, discussing how to hide their relationship from her obsessive doctor husband, who was too ethical to understand real medical innovation. You called me obsessive, Max read aloud. You said I was too diseases-focused to see that you were diseased yourself. Quote, ironic, huh? Melinda's hands trembled as she recognized her own words. I was joking. I didn't mean... Max slammed down another document. Your employment contract with Morrison Biotech, signed 8 months ago. It lists your job responsibilities as discrete client relations and specialized testing coordination. It means you weren't just having an affair, Melinda. You were an employee, a paid participant in illegal human experimentation. Max's voice turned deadly quiet. Which makes you a co-conspirator in federal bioterror crimes. The weight of her situation finally hit her. Melinda collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. What's going to happen to me? Federal conspiracy charges carry up to 20 years in prison. Max sat beside her, his voice gentle now, but there might be a way to minimize the damage. The divorce papers arrived the same day as Melinda's termination notice from Morrison Biotech. Max had timed both perfectly, ensuring maximum psychological impact. You're divorcing me? Melinda confronted him in his study. While I'm sick? While I'm facing federal prosecution? I'm protecting myself legally. If you're convicted of bioterror conspiracy, everything we own becomes subject to federal forfeiture. Max didn't look up from his computer. My wife chose to participate in bioweapons research with known criminals. My wife exposed us both to federal investigation. My wife destroyed our marriage for money and experimental drugs. Max finally met her eyes. My wife made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Max, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm dying. The symptoms are getting worse every day. If you don't treat me soon, I can't treat you. The experimental pathogen you contracted isn't covered by any standard medical protocol. Treatment would require accessing classified research materials. Max's expression remained neutral. Materials I can only access for authorized patients. I can't. You're under federal investigation for bioterror crimes. Providing you with classified medical treatment would constitute obstruction of justice. This was a complete fabrication. Max could treat Melinda anytime he chose, but she didn't know enough about federal law or medical protocols to challenge his explanation. So you're just going to let me die? I'm going to let the justice system determine your fate. The courtroom was packed for Melinda's arraignment. Max sat in the gallery watching his wife stand before the federal judge in an orange jumpsuit. Her condition had deteriorated visibly. She needed help walking, and her skin showed clear signs of systemic infection. "Mrs. Blair," the judge began, "you're charged with conspiracy to develop biological weapons, unlawful participation in human experimentation, and obstruction of federal investigation. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, we request remand without bail. The defendant participated in bioweapons development and poses a clear threat to public safety. We have recorded evidence of the defendant discussing ways to hide her activities from law enforcement. We have bank records showing payment for her participation. We have signed contracts detailing her role in recruiting other test subjects." Max watched Melinda's face go white. She hadn't known about the other test subjects. "Furthermore," the prosecutor continued, "the defendant is currently infected with a weapons-grade pathogen that could spread to the general population if she's released. Remand granted. Trial date set for 8 weeks from today." As federal marshals led Melinda away, she looked desperately toward Max. He met her eyes and mouthed silently, "You did this to yourself." The class action lawsuit hit the news 3 days later. 17 victims of Morrison Biotech's illegal human experimentation had come forward, seeking damages for medical harm, emotional trauma, and civil rights violations. Melinda Blair was named as a defendant. The financial damages sought exceeded $12 million. Even if Melinda were acquitted of federal charges, the civil lawsuit would destroy her financially for life. 6 weeks into her federal detention, Melinda's condition became critical. The experimental pathogen had progressed to systemic organ failure, and prison medical facilities were inadequate. Her attorney filed an emergency motion for compassionate release. Max testified against the motion. "Your Honor," he explained to the court, "Mrs. Blair's condition is the direct result of her voluntary participation in illegal bioweapons research. Releasing her for medical treatment would set a dangerous precedent." The judge agreed. Motion denied. But Max wasn't finished. That afternoon, he met privately with the prosecutor. "I have additional evidence about Mrs. Blair's criminal activities," he said, producing a manila envelope. "Insurance fraud. 3 years ago, she forged my signature on a medical waiver that allowed her to participate in an experimental drug trial. She received $50,000 in compensation by claiming to be a licensed medical professional." The prosecutor examined the documents. "This shows she's been involved in medical fraud for years." The final blow came when Melinda applied for experimental treatment through the CDC's emergency protocols. Her application was rejected. What the letter didn't mention was that Dr. Maxwell Blair had personally recommended against approval. As the lead researcher on Project Lazarus, his opinion carried decisive weight with the CDC review board. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Melinda had collapsed in her cell and been rushed to the prison medical unit. She was requesting to see her husband one final time. Max arrived at the federal detention center as dawn broke over Boston. Melinda lay in the medical ward, connected to machines that monitored her failing vital signs. She looked 20 years older than her actual age. "Max," she whispered when he entered. "Thank you for coming. I'm dying." "Yes. You could save me." "I know you have the cure." Max sat down beside her bed. "Yes, I do." "Then why won't you help me?" "Because you destroyed everything we built together. You betrayed our marriage, our trust, our future." His voice remained clinically calm. "You participated in bioweapons research that could have endangered innocent people. I was manipulated. You were greedy and reckless and criminally negligent." Max leaned forward. "Do you remember what you said to Phelps about me? That I was too obsessed with diseases to see that you were diseased yourself?" Melinda's eyes filled with tears. "You were right," Max continued. "I was obsessed with curing diseases, but I failed to recognize the disease that had infected my own marriage, the disease of betrayal, greed, and moral corruption that you brought into our home. Please," she whispered, "I'm begging you. You're begging the wrong person. Beg God for forgiveness. Beg your victims for mercy. Beg the justice system for compassion." Max stood to leave. "But don't beg me. I'm just a doctor who's finally learned to recognize when a patient is beyond saving." He placed an envelope on her bedside table. "Your insurance fraud case files. Thought you might want to review them before your final court appearance." Melinda opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were copies of the medical waiver she'd forged 3 years earlier. "You knew," she realized. "You've known for years about the insurance fraud." "I knew about everything, Melinda. I just chose to ignore it because I loved you, but love has limits. So you're just going to let me die? Max paused at the door. I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices. Just like you let our marriage die when you chose money and excitement over commitment and honesty. He walked out without looking back. Melinda Blair died in federal custody 6 days later. The official cause of death was multiple organ failure resulting from an untreatable experimental infection. Her funeral was small and poorly attended. Most of her friends had abandoned her after the criminal charges became public. Max didn't attend the service. Instead, he spent that day at a medical conference in Chicago, accepting an award for his contributions to infectious disease research and his courageous whistleblowing in the Morrison biotech case. Dr. Blair, a reporter asked during the press conference, your ex-wife died while you possessed the knowledge to save her life. Do you have any regrets? Max considered the question carefully. Around him, cameras flashed and reporters waited for his response. Only that I believed her lies for so long, he said finally. The audience murmured appreciatively. To them, he was a hero who had sacrificed personal happiness to protect national security, a principled scientist who had put justice above personal loyalty. Will you continue your research into viral enhancement protocols? Absolutely. The work is too important to abandon because of personal tragedy. Max smiled slightly. In fact, my wife's case proved how critical it is that we stay ahead of those who would weaponize medical research for criminal purposes. After the conference, Max drove to the airport. His phone buzzed with a new message from the CDC, a consultation request for a patient in Seattle who had contracted an unusual infection during overseas travel. Life went on. Science continued. Justice had been served. As his plane lifted off from Chicago, Max looked down at the city lights below and felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The disease that had infected his marriage was finally cured. The treatment had been harsh, but necessary. Some infections could only be eliminated by destroying the infected tissue completely. Dr. Maxwell Blair had performed the most difficult surgery of his career, cutting out the malignant tumor that had been slowly destroying his life, and he had no regrets about the outcome.